Assalamu alaikum and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really foundational story from the Quran, one that poses a huge question about unity. It's a narrative from Surah Al Imran that really it tries to connect all of divine history into this one single chain. It also explains why that chain sometimes breaks, and maybe most importantly, how we can find our way back. So, let's get right into it.
So, this is really the central question the text wants us to think about. What if every single messenger, from Abraham to Moses, Jesus to Muhammad, peace be upon them all, was part of the same team, bound by one single promise? Seriously, if you can wrap your head around this one idea, it's the key to unlocking everything else we're going to talk about today. Okay, so our story kicks off with that very foundation. We start with the ideal, right? This idea of a universal pact, a divine covenant that links every single prophet into one unbroken, unified chain.
And that brings us to what's known as the covenant of the prophets. Now, according to verse 81, this was no casual handshake. We're talking about a primordial pledge, something taken from every single prophet way back. And the deal was actually pretty straightforward. Each messenger had to promise to believe in and support any future messenger who came along confirming that same core truth. You can almost think of it like the ultimate divine team charter, And look, this isn't something that's just left up to interpretation. The text gives us the direct dialogue. God asks them, "Have you acknowledged and taken upon that my commitment?" And altogether they say, "We have acknowledged it." I mean, that exchange right there, it just hammers home how serious and binding this sacred promise really was. So when you have a pact that's that clear, that's been acknowledged by everyone, well, turning away from it isn't just a simple disagreement, is it? Verse 82 is very clear. It defines it as defiant disobedience. It's like the text sets up this perfect ideal, and then boom, immediately shows us the heavy consequences for breaking it. And that right there sets the stage for the whole conflict. All right, so if turning away is defiant disobedience, then what does that conflict actually look like in practice? Well, that brings us to the next part, the broken promise. This is the point where that beautiful divine ideal of unity just crashes head-on into the messy reality of human division. So verse 83 kind of lays out this fork in the road, two very different paths. On one side, you've got the path of submission. And the text makes this amazing point that everything in creation, I mean everything, from the biggest galaxies to the tiniest atoms, already submits to God's laws. Some do it willingly, like believers, and some do it by compulsion, just by following the laws of physics and nature. And then there's the other path, the choice to seek another way, a choice that's framed as literally going against the grain of the entire universe. Okay, so what does true belief actually look like then in this whole picture? Well, verse 84 lays it out for us plain and simple. It's not about picking your favorite prophets or choosing which books to follow. It's about a complete, total acceptance. Belief in Allah, belief in what was revealed to us, and in what was given to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Jesus, all of them. The key phrase is, we make no distinction between any of them. This idea of universal acceptance, that's presented as the cure for all the division. And the text really takes this logic to its final conclusion in verse 85. It makes a statement that's, pretty definitive. It says that any religion, any path other than Islam, and remember, here Islam means that pure, simple submission to the one God that all the prophets practiced, it just won't be accepted, and that choosing another way ultimately leads to being among the losers in the hereafter. It's a very clear-cut statement. So, where do we go from here? This brings us to the third part of this whole narrative, the correction. Right? After spelling out the broken promise and the division it caused, the message now presents itself as the solution, as the way to get back to that original, pure, uncorrupted truth. And to make its case, the text gets really specific. It dives right into a historical debate, tackling a question that was a huge point of contention back then. And that question was, whose house of worship was actually the first one ever established? And verse 96 gives a very direct answer. The Quran states, point blank, that the very first house of worship established for all of humanity was the one at Bakka, which is another name for Makkah. It's described as being blessed and a guidance for the entire world. And you have to understand the context here. This was a direct response to claims that the temple in Jerusalem was the primary or first one. So then you get this powerful call to action in verse 95, which kind of wraps up this whole correction. It's a command. Say, Allah has told the truth, so follow the religion of Abraham.
And it describes that religion as pure, truth-inclined monotheism. The message is so clear. It's about a return. It's not about starting something new, but about getting back to the original, universal faith of the very first monotheist.
Okay, so we've seen the ideal, we've seen the conflict, and we've seen the correction. Now what? Well, the text provides a path forward. This last part is all about practical advice, a direct warning, and a really clear set of instructions for the community of believers. And, the text really doesn't pull any punches in verse 100. It gives a very direct warning to the believers. It says, listen, if you start obeying some of those who received the scriptures before you, there's a real risk they could turn you away from your faith completely. The context here tells us this wasn't just a hypothetical. It was a real-time problem, with people actively trying to create doubt among the early Muslims. So the natural question is, how do you guard against that? And verse 101 gives a super clear 3-step guide for staying on what it calls the straight path. Number 1, you actively listen as the verses of Allah are recited to you. Number 2, you acknowledge that His messenger is right there among you as a source of living guidance. And number 3, and this is the big one, you hold firmly to Allah. That's it. And that guidance comes with this incredibly powerful promise at the end. It's this beautiful reassurance that, the path isn't meant to be complicated, and whoever holds firmly to Allah has indeed been guided to a straight path. The destination is basically assured by that one simple act of just holding on. And so we kind of end up right back where we started, but hopefully with a totally new perspective. What we've seen is that these verses argue that the divine message has always been one of unity, one of submission, which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. If the message is, and always has been, one, then what's the real reason for all the divisions we see?